Okay, so this is gonna be a bit of a companion piece to my current Dark Souls for Beginners playthrough. I didn't want to get too stuck while showing how to get through areas on technical aspects of the game. So I'm gonna separate that, and I will continuously have these little videos where I go a little bit over certain aspects of the game that I think you should know or understand at that point. Here I am going to go over the basic controls of the game: running, jumping, backstepping, rolling, attacking with your right hand, left hand, two-handing, blocking, parrying, kicking, and so on and so forth. I'll show you how to navigate through the game menu and actually find information or items you might be looking for, how to read your armor and weapon stats, and where to best compare whether or not to switch to a different weapon, how consumable items work, how you should go about figuring out Dark Souls lore, and what happens when you die. I will add timestamps in the description of the video, so if you don't want to watch the entire thing, but just look for something specific, I recommend you make good use of that. So let's start by going over how to navigate your character through the world. You can either do a slow walk, which you might want to do in certain situations where you're afraid of falling off somewhere, because let me be honest with you, gravity always has been and still is my biggest enemy in this game. So falling off of things happens quite frequently. But if you want to be careful about it, you just very carefully push your directional stick, your left stick forward, and not all the way, so we'll slowly walk. Most of the time you'll just be doing the, I want to say, like the normal walk or the jog that you do by just pressing your stick forward all the way, like I am doing right now. But then sometimes when you want to get out of a situation and get away from an enemy really quickly, or you have just a long way to go and you're bored watching your character do it slowly, you might want to run. And you can do that by pressing your left stick at the same time as holding down a button. On the PlayStation controller, it's circle. On an Xbox controller, it's the B button. So if you press forward while holding that button, you're gonna run, but you will notice that you are using stamina to do this, which wasn't the case for the normal run. So as soon as you run out of stamina, you're gonna stop the run and regenerate your stamina. That self-same button, if you don't hold it pressed, but just tap it, so circle or B, while not walking at all, will execute a backstep. So you'll hop backwards, which, you know, can be used to get away from an attack quickly. I think it's the quickest way to get out of an attack that is gonna barely hit you, essentially. And that actually also changes a little bit what the next swing is gonna be that you execute. I will go back to weapon movesets in a bit, but just remember backstepping until then. If you click the circle or B button while you are moving, instead of a backstep, it will perform a roll. And rolling is the skill that you need to learn the most in this game. Rolling lets you avoid damage because it will provide a certain amount of iframes after you do it. So invincibility frames, or not after you do it, while you do it actually. And how long you're invincible for depends on your equip load. So how heavy the equipment that you have on is. I will explain a little more about equip load after I have gone through the basic controls. But rolling, essentially, let's try this out on an enemy. Okay, this guy here, he's gonna come and hit me. So if he hits me, I'm gonna take damage. But if I roll through this, I am not taking damage. Now, I'm not immune to everything. Like, if I just completely run into a swing, like, head first, I'm still gonna take damage, but for the most part, rolling to the side... Whoopsie. Rolling to the side will let me avoid this damage. Rolling is a really important skill to learn for you because it is really the best way to avoid damage. You're not going to get staggered. You're not taking a hit and risking something like you do when blocking. You use up some stamina while doing it, but less than blocking a hit would. And it actually gets you out of the spot you were in previously. So, if there's one thing, aside from how to block correctly, that I think people should learn early on in the game, it is rolling. Attacking, you do with whatever hand you hold your weapon in. So currently I have a weapon in my right hand, therefore I will attack with my right hand. I do that with my right, the RB button on the Xbox controller and RT button on the PlayStation controller. For convenience, this is going to be called R1 from now on. So this is my R1. The same button on the left side is going to be the L1, and the button below that, which is on the Xbox controller, the RT. And LT, and on the PlayStation controller, the R2 and L2, I will refer to as R2 and L2. And you will execute different attacks based on what button you use there, and there's also combos. All of this is different for each weapon, so each weapon has a unique, I don't want to say unique, some weapons have completely unique movesets, others have very similar movesets based on their type. So I'm holding an axe, and pressing attack once will perform this swing, clicking it twice. Actually, I'm gonna slash back and forth, so there is 2 moves essentially that I do by just clicking it. My R2 is essentially a heavier version, so a slightly slower but more forceful version of my R1. Now, the difference between the R2 and R1 is usually the R2 on your weapon is gonna be a bit slower and hit a bit harder. But depending on what kind of weapon you're using, it could also be that one of them is a slash and the other is an overhead swing, or maybe even a forward stab. So depending on where you are, you might prefer to use one over the other, because you don't want to use like wide swings when you're in a small corridor, and you don't want to do forward stabs when you're facing, say, 10 low health enemies. There you want to do big swings so you can hit more than one enemy at the same time, right? So your moveset isn't just about what has the biggest damage, but also which attack feels right. What do I like? And often people will ask like, what weapon should I use? What's good? And I always go with, I don't know, like try the moveset. Like what appeals to you? I know that there's weapons that are really popular and I just don't like them because I don't like the way they swing. Other people swear by them. It's just really a matter of preference. So when you get a new weapon, I recommend that you just put it on and you try out the moveset. You have your R1s that you can chain. You have your R2s. This one really only has one kind of R2, but other weapons might have chains for that as well. You will do a different attack for many weapons if it happens after a backstep. So if I backstep and then attack, see, this is more of an overhead downward swing. This is my normal R1 and this is my backstep R1. You will have a different attack after you execute a roll. Whoops. Ooh. So my rolling R1 is an even cooler downward donk, sorry, than here. So this, very nice. And if you hold your weapon in both hands, which you can do by clicking on the Xbox controller, the Y button, and on the PlayStation controller, the triangle. If you press that, you're holding your weapon with both hands. What that does is it increases your strength stat by 1.5. To 1.5 essentially. So currently my character has 14 strength, but if I two-hand my weapon by using this button, then I effectively raise it to 21. And that means that I will be doing more damage. So more damage, and it has an effect on your moveset. So let's see what this looks now. Okay, kind of similar. I'm attacking slower, which is usually the case when doing this. What's my R2 look like? Okay. Just a slower, heavier version of this. So we'll look at my backstep R1. Okay, kind of similar. How about my rolling R1? Ah, kind of similar. Okay, well the hand axe isn't the most exciting weapon. It's not bad actually. It's fairly solid as far as starting weapon goes, but it's just kind of boring. Alright, that is your right hand. Obviously, if you're that way inclined, you can use your left hand for this. But if you put your weapon in your left hand, you will notice that you're just using it to block. So, unfortunately, you can't cosplay as a lefty in this game in the same way that you might like. So if you put your weapon in your left hand, you're just kind of using it as a shield. So, I guess for the most part, there's some rare exceptions, but that's too much detail for now. Don't put your weapon in your left hand. Keep it in your right hand. Your left hand is good for two things. One of them is a shield, so you can use it to block by pressing the L1 button. And parry, which you do by pressing the L2 button. Now, let me just go back to respawning these enemies here so that we can have a look at both of these mechanics. So blocking means that, whoopsie, that your shield will absorb some, if not all, of the damage that an enemy does to you, provided you still have stamina. Because blocking actually uses up quite a bit of stamina. So, whew, as you can see, I'm almost out of stamina, and when you run out of stamina, as you can see here, you get staggered and you just eat hits to your face. So one of the most important things that you need to learn if you want to play with a shield and block is when to actually have your shield up, because you do not want to get caught like I just did for the purpose of demonstration with no stamina and your shield up. Because when you have your shield up, you do not regenerate stamina. At least not very quickly. You do regenerate a little bit, but not really. So the default position for your shield should be down. You shouldn't just stand there and like block everything until you find like a good spot. You don't do this. You don't walk around like I do right now. You walk around like this. Your shield is down. You're not pressing any buttons. Your shield is down, and your shield only goes up just as a swing is incoming, and then you immediately drop it. So shield is down, swing comes in, and drop and hit. Because another nice effect of blocking is not only do you not take that damage, depending on your shield stats obviously, but also often your enemies will get a bit staggered because they just like dunk their weapon into your shield, and then they will stagger back a bit, and that gives you a good opening for attacking them. So yeah, shields can be nice. Shields need to be used correctly though. Don't be a turtle. Don't walk around like this. Don't do this. Do this. All right. Another thing you can do with your shield, and I'm honestly, frankly, very bad at it, is to parry an enemy's incoming blows. You do this by using your L2 button. So you see, if you click your L2, it's not about holding it. Blocking you hold, parrying is you do this at the right moment when an enemy swing is incoming. When you do it at the right moment, you will parry their blow and can follow up with an R1, but only an R1, to deal a really massive amount of damage to them. Now, there's downsides to this. First of all, not every enemy in the game can be parried. A lot of enemies can be parried, and some bosses can even be parried. But a lot of bosses can't be carried, and for example, I'm pretty sure you can't parry any of the animals. So parrying only works on, you know, enemies like this guy who's holding a weapon and it's kind of humanoid. Second of all, if you mess it up, because the window in order when you press that button is really slow, as you can see. Ah, here we go. And I still messed it up. I didn't do my critical attack at the right time. If you mess it up... If you mess it up, you're just gonna eat a lot of damage. So parrying is a skill, and it's a very useful skill if you're good at it. Personally, I didn't even start trying until my second or third playthrough. It's perfectly possible to get through the game without doing it right. Or knowing how to do that. There's certain areas in the game that get much easier if you learn them, and I will actually come back to the parrying skill when we get there. But I suggest for a beginner to just skip doing it. For now, just know that's how you do it. Another thing you can hold in your right hand is items that let you cast spells. Currently, I equipped the Pyromancy Flame. There's also the option to have catalysts, which let you cast sorceries, or talismans, which lets you cast miracle. So there's 3 kinds of spells, or schools of spell in Dark Souls. There's pyromancies, which is fire spells, miracles, which is buff spells, and for the most part, buffs and heals, and sorceries, which is offensive magic spells. Now, I have a spell, as you can see. So I can use a Pyromancy Flame in my right hand. So I just use that. Whoop, and I cast a spell here. Sorry, in my left hand. I can hold it in my right hand as well. So spells you can hold both in your left and your right hand. But since you can only hold weapons in your right hand, it's a very popular thing for spellcasters to have a weapon in their right hand and their spellcasting weapon in their left hand. Can, of course, also do, you know, spellcasty thing and shield. That way you can block and cast spells. Alright. Another thing you can do to enemies, now, this isn't the best place to demonstrate that, unfortunately, but you can kick them. You kick enemies by clicking forward on your left stick and hitting the R1 button at the same time. Kicking will, yeah, like you see, it staggers an enemy, and if they are turtling behind their shield, which there are enemies that are very annoying about that basically never drop their shield, it will make them drop their shield, and then you can hit them. Kicking, you probably don't need this a lot, but it's useful to know the combination to click for those few times when you do need it. So, try to see about figuring that out. Probably sooner rather than later. In fact, the next area in the game that we're going to go to, the Undead Burg, has 2 enemies that are practically there to teach you how to do this. Now, so far I've been navigating through the menu a lot and just like showing you different things. The next thing I'd like to show you is to actually how to use the menu. So you do that by clicking, you know, the start or options button on your controller, and then you will see these 4 options here. this is your inventory, the first one. This is sort of also your inventory, but this is where you actually change equipment. Here you can see all the items you have. Here you can put them on. This is your character stats page. What level are you? What stats do you have? And this is the options. Not gonna go into the options because they're fairly self-explanatory, with the exception of one thing. So you have network settings here, where there is an option called region matchmaking, which says either local or global. I would suggest that if you're playing with the internet, that you set this to global in order to get the biggest amount of people that you can co-op with, and summon sign visibility to unrestricted, so that you can again play with as many people as possible. There is an option in Dark Souls Remastered which is called the matchmaking password, which is if you want to summon or be summoned by a specific person later on, you can both agree on a password to put in there, and then only people who have put this password in will be able to see your summon sign. Those are quite useful. Otherwise, let's start at the beginning here. This is your inventory. Oops. So, here you can see all the consumable items that you have. So, whoops. You can navigate with your D-pad through the various item categories. These are a bunch of items that you have that you can use. Here, Estus Flask you use to heal. Black Separation Crystal. It says Banish Phantom, Return Home. This is, for example, if you've been summoned by someone and they're just running around or just sitting around doing nothing, and you're like, well, damn, what do I do? Like, this person summoned me and just sat down and they're wasting my time. Nothing is happening. You can use this to return back to your world, for example. You're going to continuously find souls through the game, which you can use to, like the name suggests, get a certain amount of souls. Depending on what the name of this item is, you're going to get more or less of them. You can find humanity, which it says greatly restore HP. For a beginner, I wouldn't use this as a restore health item, but you can use this to gain soft humanity, which ups the counter here in the top, what is it called, like the circle. And let me just use one of these so you can see. Here we go. Now it says 01 in the top corner, and you can use this to reverse hollowing. And that will make the circle become white, or the number, so you can see am I hollow or not. It will make your character look human. And now I can summon other players, or I can be invaded by other players. Being human is also a prerequisite for kindling the bonfire. So doing this here, which will increase by +5 the amount of Estus that you get when you rest at this bonfire. However, in order to do that, I'd actually need even more humanity, because it costs 1 humanity. As you see, I used the item up. It says 00, so I can't show you this at the moment. Yeah. You will, throughout your playthrough, pick up several items that you will see in this part of the menu. Herbs, or maybe items that will infuse your weapon with an elemental magic, or items that will restore health, items that will give you a certain amount of magic resistance, so you will be able to see them here. You got upgrade materials, which will be in the second category. Keys. Throughout the game, you're gonna run into locked doors, and eventually you're gonna find keys for them at some point, so you'll find them in this part. Spells. All the spells that you find weapons and shields, arrows and crossbow bolts, armors that you find, and rings. So this is, you can see just an overview of everything that you found in this menu. The next menu over here is where you actually select your equipment. Over here you can put in usable items. So currently I only have the Estus Flask equipped. I could add, for example, a Soul of a Lost Undead here. If I did that, and then I went back here, if I want to switch now between the Estus Flask and the Soul of an Undead, which is pointless, I'm just doing it for demonstration here. If I click the down arrow on my D-pad, I can now switch between those two. So this is just your quick menu for items, and you switch it with the down arrow on your D-pad. Your weapons you have here. You can queue up 2 weapons in your left hand and 2 things in your right hand. So I can show you this, for example. I can have the straight sword hilt here, and I can have the pyromancy flame and a shield in my left hand. And if I wanted to switch weapon now, I would click the right arrow on my D-pad. That switches between those two. And the left arrow on my D-pad switches between those two. Now keep in mind that every item you put on adds to your equip load. Your character can only carry a certain amount of items. If your equip load becomes too high, your roll and your stamina regeneration and your running will suffer greatly. So don't put on too many heavy things, because as soon as they are in one of these slots, so these 4 armor slots and these 4 weapon slots, they will weigh you down. So don't hold things unless you need to. So on the note of equip load, I switched here to my friendly neighborhood Sunbro, Miss FN Sunbro. Equip load. How does it work? So in your character menu, you have here this number, and it says currently the maximum equip load for me is 117 kilos, I guess. And currently I've got on 29.1. That lets me execute a so-called fast roll, because 29.1 is just below 25% of my maximum equip load. A fast roll gives me around 13 iframes or invincibility frames, and the roll takes about 21 to 24 frames. So I am rolling and I am invincible for slightly less than half of the duration of my roll, which is pretty nice, which you can achieve by either having a really high equip load, because I'm currently wearing what is like medium armor, right? Or by just wearing really, really light armor. If you were more than that, if I put on something that puts me at slightly more than that, so now my equip load is at 33.4, which means it is between 25 and 50% maximum equip load. Now, my roll is gonna be slower, as you can see, so it's gonna take me longer to get up. Now the roll is actually around 33 frames long, and I'm only invincible for 11 of those. So now it's actually down to a third of the time that I'm invincible. And this is still good too. In fact, a lot of players will actually only go down to a medium roll. That's enough to get through the game nicely. And then there is the so-called slow or fat roll that happens when you put on really heavy equipment, which I just did. So now, poof, my controller actually vibrates when I do this. This is a really slow roll. It takes 46 frames and I'm only invincible for 9 of those, so that's less than a quarter of the time. This is terrible. Like, there's no point even in doing it. Additionally, if you are at 50% equip load or more, not only will you do this bizarre roll, your stamina will regenerate slower. So if you're this heavily equipped, you are going to for example, if you block and take a hit, it's going to take you much longer to actually get your stamina back. So I really don't recommend it. I know it is, especially for new players who are like, oh, but so much damage reduction, I'm going to take less damage if I get hit. Yes, that's correct. But the game will always punish you for taking hits. It doesn't really matter what the situation is. Getting hits will get you punished. The punishment for this armor is like, yeah, you're not taking a whole lot of damage, but you're not going to be able to roll. You're not going to avoid damage. You're going to be really bad at regenerating stamina. And you know, you use stamina with your swings, right? So you're going to be able to attack less as a result because it takes such a long time for the stamina to come back. So wearing this armor in particular, I don't want to spoil anything by revealing what it is or where you find it for the moment, but the thing is, there are times in the game where you're just like, I cannot get through this. I'm gonna put on the heaviest armor I can, and I'm just gonna swing my weapon wildly and just like hope for the best. Yeah, that works. That's a valid strategy, but overall the game is gonna punish you for doing that. So overall, I recommend keeping your equip load below 50%. Personally, I actually feel happiest at a fast roll. So I like keeping it at the super sweet fast roll. That's so nice. But play the game you want to play. So if you want to run around like a turtle and just slowly but steadily oomph your way through the world of Lord Run, you do you, right? Another thing you can look at in this menu is your weapon stats. If you actually select this, so by clicking either the A or the A button on the Xbox controller or the X button on the PlayStation controller, you will get into this menu where you can switch between weapons. And if you click X now, so at the bottom it will tell you what controls you have available. They're maybe not super speaking, but if you click X now, it will show you more information about this weapon. It will show you what the attack type is. It just says regular. The weapon type, this is an axe. So a lot of axes in the game will have similar properties, similar movesets, for example. So you've got swords, axes, halberds, and so on. Here is the damage you inflict. Obviously, the damage, the number that you see on an enemy not only depends on your weapon, but also their defenses. So it's rarely going to purely match up what you see here. But the base damage that you inflict here is, and you see two numbers, physical. It says 80 plus 10. 80 is the damage that the weapon does based on its upgrade level on its own. And the plus 10 is the multiplier that you get for your stats. You can see here at the bottom, there's a parameter bonus, it says. The degree by which attack is boosted by player strength, dexterity, intelligence, and faith. And this weapon has a C scaling for strength and a D scaling for dexterity, which means there is a minimal increase in the damage I do based on the fact that I have 10 dexterity, and a mild increase to the amount of damage that I do because I have 14 strength. And this plus 10 is what is added because of that. The better the scaling and the better my stats, the bigger this number will be. Now this is a purely physical weapon, but later in the game you're gonna find or make other weapons that add certain magical elements to it, such as magic, fire, or lightning, and you would see those numbers here. This is the damage that you do with critical attacks, which is, for example, the successful parry follow-up, or a backstab, for example, where you hit an enemy from the back and do a critical attack on them. This one does the normal amount of damage, but there are weapons that do bizarre amounts of critical damage. They might have low base damage actually, but when you successfully carry out a parry and counter attack, you will do huge amounts of damage with those weapons. So watch out for weapons that have like a big modifier here if you're really into a playstyle of parry or backstab. On the right side, it says damage reduction. That would be for blocking. So if you were to use this axe as a shield, these are the reduction numbers. They're obviously not very good. And these are the required parameters. So these are the minimum stats that you need in order to actually use this weapon. 4 strength, dexterity, intelligence, and face. So 8 strength, 8 dexterity is needed to use the weapon. Weapon durability, so the more you use a weapon, the more it will get, or the more it will lose durability. If it reaches 0, the weapon will break and you won't be able to use it anymore, essentially. But you will find options to repair weapons continuously throughout the game later. And weight is how much does this weapon actually weigh. The axe is pretty light. They're gonna be very happy. They're gonna be very heavy weapons later in the game. If you're not saying, yeah, this hand axe, that's all well and good, but what if I switched it to the sword hilt? So if I just went up, then it will show you either in blue numbers where that new weapon would be better, or in red numbers where that weapon would be worse. And as you can see, unsurprisingly, the straight sword hilt is just shit. But I have found a short sword by now, which is a bit worse in all regards as far as the numbers go, but it has better scaling for dexterity, for example. So if you find new weapons, make sure to compare what this looks like compared to what you're currently using. Shields, similarly, you can look at them. You could technically hit something with a shield, I guess, if you use it. But for shields, you want to look at the right side of this screen, so the damage reduction part. This is a number that if you're blocking, you have a damage reduction of 65. So you don't get like additional armor just for wearing a shield. This is just actively for using a shield. So if you're blocking with the shield and a physical blow comes in, you're going to reduce the damage by 65%. You're going to reduce magical damage incoming by 55%, fire damage by 10%, and lightning damage by 45%. So I wouldn't block fire with this. It's better to try to avoid it, for example. And I mean, this is a terrible shield. Like 65% damage reduction. Why would you want to do that? In that case, just rather try not to take any damage at all. Weapon stability means how much stamina do you lose while you're blocking. The higher this value is, the less stamina you use. So better stability means you can block more successive attacks. So stability is a really important factor for a shield, and often when you upgrade one at the blacksmith, this will improve dramatically. So don't use shields that have bad stability and just bad damage reduction. It's better to try to roll out of an attack than block with a bad shield. Any day. For your pyromancy flames or other magic cast items such as catalysts or what are they called? Talismans. The thing you should watch out for is this here. It's called the Mag Adjust. So that tells you by which degree the magic you're casting is being boosted by the items. Now, the nice thing for pyromancy flames is this is completely stat independent. As you can see, there is no scaling. Oops, here. Absolutely none. And that's because pyromancy flames, they're just the damage is dependent on the upgrade level. But for Catalyst and for Miracles, you're gonna have scaling at the bottom, and the Match Adjust is what's gonna scale with your stat in either Intelligence or Faith, and the upgrade level of the item in question. So when you find new weapons or shields, always check this menu, and as I said earlier, also check the moveset, because now I have a sword instead of an axe, for example, and this has a slightly different moveset. So the L2 for this sword is a stab, which is actually pretty useful if you're in a tight corridor, for example. So you have a swing and you have a stab. That makes a pretty big difference in certain situations. So always remember to check that out. Since I was on the topic of spells, as you can see at the top of this item menu in the bottom left, it says Fireball. That's because that's the spell I've currently equipped. You can switch that spell if you had more than one, which I don't currently do, by clicking the up button on the D-pad. As you can see, I only have one spell here. And one peculiarity about spells is that you can only change which ones you have equipped when you're resting at a bonfire. So here you see an option, it's called Attune Magic, where you can then pick, I currently have 2 spell slots. I could equip a second spell, it's only I don't have one. But I could unequip this spell, and then I'd have nothing equipped here. So, and if I attune magic now, I can add this spell. And the number next to the spell is how many uses I have of this. So Dark Souls 1 doesn't have, you don't have like a magicka bar or something, you don't have mana. You just have a certain amount of uses for any given spell. And 8 is actually not a whole lot, so Fireball isn't there to be used as a primary offensive thing, because you are more often than not gonna run into more than 8 enemies between one bonfire and the next. Using an Estus Flask here, I've used some Estus Flask, and using weapons, using spells, is something where if you rest at a bonfire, so note now I have 7 remaining fireballs and 9 Estus Flasks. If I rest at a bonfire, I'm back to 8 and 10. So using these items or spells will be replenished by sitting at the bonfire. Using any other consumables will not be replenished. So take care when you're using an item. Unless they're a spell or an Estus Flask, they're gonna be gone forever, essentially. You can find more of certain things, but just keep that in mind. Now, this is Dark Souls, and a thing that's inherent in Dark Souls is that sooner or later, you're gonna die. So, let's go do that. Let's go kill ourselves. It's a bit sad because I'm currently human, but who cares? Whoops. I died. Okay, now what? When you die, you spawn back at the last bonfire you sat at. I'm now no longer human, so if you go human and you die, you lose your humanity. So you'd have to use another humanity, sit at the bonfire and reverse hollowing in order to be human again. At the bottom right, you can see that I currently have 0 souls because I lost all of my souls, so my experience currency when I died. But there is now, up here, there's this nice green stain. That's my souls. I lost them, but I got them back. So now I have 882 souls. If I were to die... Whoopsie. So, now I died again? Oh, look, this guy committed suicide. How nice of him. So, if I go up now, and if I don't pick up my souls, they're gonna be gone forever. You only have one chance to pick them up. And when I say one chance, I mean like one one time until death. If you were to log out now and log back in, they would still be there. But if I died now, these souls would be gone. And instead, whatever souls I have gathered until dying will be there, which is currently 0. But like, if I kill this guy now, and so now I have 60 souls, and now I die. Very sad. Happens all the time. There's gonna be a new green stain where I died, and your souls are gonna be roughly in the place that you died. So, oops. Let's see. Let's pick up a new stain. There we go. There's gonna be only 60 of them. Sad. Now, I said sad, but the thing I want to tell you is don't be sad. Like, people lose souls all the times. It might even be a couple of thousand, but the thing is, it's just souls. There's more. You're gonna get so much more. And it doesn't even matter, like in Dark Souls 1, it doesn't matter how many souls you've picked up. You can grind out more. There's areas in the game where you can get more souls. It's fine. Like, don't sweat it. Like, if you can pick up your souls, obviously you want to pick them up. But don't stress out too much because you lost souls in a spot. Like, sometimes you're gonna die more trying to get back to your souls than if you were just to be like, ah, fuck it. So, don't sweat it. If you lose souls, you lose souls. It's not the end of the world. The last thing I want to go over today is lore. My playthrough isn't going to be a lore playthrough, so I won't go into too much detail about what's happening and why, and I don't want to do that here either because I don't want to spoiler things for you. But I do want to tell you how you will find out about lore. How you find out about lore is you talk to NPCs and you listen to what they say. You don't get a quest log. You don't get a codex or something. You actually, while they're talking, and oftentimes they will only tell you a thing once. So, while you're talking to them, listen to what it is that they're saying. Second, item descriptions. All of the items in your inventory, be it consumables like the Estus Flask, or weapons, or spells, have an item description. You can see that if you go to the toggle display. Here it says, the undead treasure these dull green flasks. Fill with Estus at bonfire, fills HP. The Estus Flasks are linked to the Fire Keepers. The Dark Tales also make reference, and so on and so forth. Like, your weapons will have the same thing. Here, in this menu, this small straight sword is widely used to an extent, only matched by the long sword. Now, this is like a very garden variety item, but you'd be surprised what sort of information about this world you can learn just by reading these things. And the Dark Souls story is not told to you in a straightforward way. You're gonna have to read these things, or you're gonna have to talk to people, and you're gonna have to pay attention to what item you find where, because sometimes there's even significance just in where you pick something up, and that'll clue you in as to what's going on. But not immediately. You're gonna have to get quite a ways into the game until you figure it out. Or, you know, you're one of those people who don't care about lore and just like, yeah, whatever, fuck it. I wanna kill Skelly Man. That's fine too, I guess. Okay. Hope this helps, and see you soon in the second part of my walkthrough of Dark Souls.